It's all a significant shift away from the last decade of the Liberal climate policy. So how is it really going over in caucus? Well, James Maloney is the Liberal Caucus Chair, and he joins us right now. Welcome to Power Play.
Thanks very much, Mike. Glad to be here.
We just heard from a number of members of your caucus. They were speaking about how it's a big tent party. But I wanted to ask you, how big of a shock was this to you when you heard that he resigned?
It was disappointing. Look, Steven's been a valuable member of our caucus and a valuable member of the cabinet since 2019 when he was elected. I'm disappointed to see him go. But look, don't lose sight of the fact he's not leaving caucus. He stepped down from cabinet, so he's still going to be a very constructive voice in caucus, and I look forward to continuing to work with him.
A constructive voice in caucus, but what does this do to the caucus dynamic? You're in charge of really making sure that there is peace and harmony inside caucus, but when you consider what he said in his post and how he was watching this policy be dismantled, what does that do to caucus the harmony, I should say, within caucus?
I don't think it does anything negative to caucus harmony, honestly. Cabinet and caucus are two different things. He's still going to be in caucus. I look forward to working with him. And, my colleagues that you aired their comments before I came on, they said it very well. We have a very united caucus. I mean, people have been asking me for days, how do you feel about this caucus problem? Do you have a caucus problem? The answer is no, and it's a hard no. We really don't. We have a big, diverse group of people from a big, diverse country, and I've been an MP for 10 years now, and this is no different than any other discussion we've had. I mean, people have different opinions, and that's what caucus is for. So the problem that some people want to exist, frankly, because they're trying to, it makes it look sexy, I guess, but there's really no problem. I mean, caucus is united. I can say that hand on heart.
But are you saying that the journalists who are asking those questions of you, and they're saying that they're hearing that, you're saying they're making that up?
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying there is different opinions on issues, but I think people are trying to translate into something that it's not, which is caucus disunity, because that does not exist. I can assure you of that. Look, as I said, I've been there for 10 years. There have been lots of times when I've disagreed with some of the things that the government of the day might have been doing, and I've expressed that opinion, but we have a way of working it out in caucus and coming out united. And that's not to say we have anything to work out here. We really don't. Caucus is truly united. I came out of the meeting on Wednesday, with 169 of my colleagues, and people were all on the same page. I mean, there's discussions going on. And on Wednesday, look, I mean, we hadn't seen the MOU at that point. The MOU came out yesterday, and I've read it a couple times thoroughly now, and I think that there was a lot of discussion around a narrative that hadn't been properly defined yet.
But at the same time, we do know that members of the BC caucus from your Liberals, they were briefed on that MOU prior to yesterday's announcement. How would you describe their feeling about this deal?
I have not spoken individually with all of the BC caucus, my BC caucus colleagues. I have spoken with several of them, and I've seen them in our national caucus meetings, and I've seen them in other discussions. It's closer to home for them, but again, this is anything you're hearing in the media or stories that are spoken of. There's no caucus disunity. I mean, it's an issue closer to home for them than it is for me here in Ontario, but it's an important national issue. I don't think any of this can or should be translated into something that it's not, which is a problem in caucus, because there isn't one. There really isn't one.
Do you agree that this will be, as you had sort of mentioned, it's closer to home for those BC Liberals? Do you agree that it'll be tougher for them to try and go back into their ridings and explain to their people why there's been such a dramatic shift in climate policy by the Liberal government?
Well, let's start at the tail end of that question. I don't know that there has been a dramatic shift, first of all. This is a memorandum of understanding about setting the groundwork for future dialogue with Alberta and British Columbia and Indigenous communities. So they will have they will have to go back to their constituencies and talk to their constituents about it, yes, but I think now that the MOU is out there and it's in the public, and you've heard from both premiers, and you've heard from the Prime Minister, and you've heard from others, I think people will understand it better. And if you read the agreement, I don't think that it's going to be a challenge for them to, explain to their constituents what's going on.
Respectfully, Mr. Guilbeault said that some of the measures that remained essential to the Liberal climate plan are being dismantled. He noted the consumer carbon price, oil and gas sector emissions cap, clean electricity regulations. So I guess I just want to ask you again, is that not clear in how those were key to Mr. Guilbeault, and he felt that those were key planks to the Liberal climate policy. So how can you say that that is not a dramatic change?
Well, I would disagree with him on his interpretation of what the MOU says. I don't think it's a dismantling in any way, shape, or form. I think it sets out a clear path for a dialogue between the Canadian government and the Alberta government about how to address some of these issues. And I think that's positive, I think it's constructive, and I think it's responsible. And I think that's what you saw reflected in the comments of the Prime Minister afterwards, and I think that's what you saw reflected in the comments of the Premier of Alberta. Mr. Steven has a different interpretation of that, but we'll continue to talk to him about that, and that's you'd have to ask him about that. But I don't think it's a dismantling at all.
But you're taking away the emissions cap, also the consumer carbon tax, that's gone. I mean, some would say if a Conservative Prime Minister did this, that your party would be extremely critical of these moves. So I guess my question is the Liberal Party still a champion of the environment?
Question to answer. It's a hard yes. The consumer carbon tax was removed before yesterday, and if you look at the MOU, there's target dates when some of these issues have to be addressed. April 1st being the significant date. So nothing has been dismantled. It's just created a framework and a time frame to address some of these issues on a
But
very
there's a
specific
pathway
basis.
to it, Mr. Maloney. With respect, there's a pathway to it, and the words of dismantling and doing away with those are Steven Guilbeault's words. Those are not mine.
Well, okay, but as I said, I disagree with the interpretation of the MOU. I don't see it as a dismantling at all. I see this as a positive, constructive approach to, with one level of government dealing with another level of government. There's been for a long time, as long as I can remember, as long as you can remember, Mike, people like to talk about tensions between the Alberta government and the federal government. This is a responsible agreement between the two levels of government to create a framework and a structure to have these discussions in the way that they should be and in a responsible way. That's all this is. It's not a dismantling of anything.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're all out of time, Mr. Maloney. I do appreciate you coming on the show. Liberal Caucus Chair James Maloney, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure, anytime.